welcome back to Book Club Preview. Today we're finishing the book Death in the Clouds, chapter 24, 25, and wowie wow wow, chapter 26, which I feel this whole book is leading up to this chapter. Chapter 24 is pretty short. It starts off with Hercule Poirot talking with Fourier and trying to figure out everything's just not fitting together. Trying to figure it out. They end up having dinner or lunch or coffee or something with Jane, and Jane mentions that she broke her fingernail. And Hercule's kind of like wondering what's going on. His brain's not fitting the pieces together, but then that happens, and he goes, boom! Oh my goodness! That reminds me. Countess Horbury called in her maid, who was Anne Morset, the daughter of Madame Giselle. So Madame Giselle's daughter was on the plane. Okay, this changes everything. Hercule Poirot starts like thinking. He's like, wait. He's like trying to think if this and this, and then that means that, and that. And he's trying to. He's going crazy. Well, he suddenly fears. Okay, there's a lot going on here, but he fears that that Mrs. Richards, okay, that's her married name, is in danger. And Ferrer is kind of worried. He thinks Hercule's kind of gone crazy, but they're speeding to the hotel. They find out that she had just left. And Hercule this whole time was like, oh, I'm so afraid. I'm afraid something bad is going to happen. We got to go, faster. And they realize that when they get to her hotel, Mrs. Richards, that she had just left. And she had left early and unplanned. She ended up on a boat and had drank some poison and died. And the police thought it was suicide. And so when Hercule Poirot finds out about this, he tells Jane, and they say, oh, she must have been the murderer because she had the motive to kill her mama and get money. She was there at the time, and she had like passed her, so she could have killed her. And then she must have killed herself because she felt guilty. Case closed. But that leaves us with chapter 26, where Monsieur Poirot drops the bomb, and he invites Daniel Clancy and Norman Gale to all have lunch with him, or dinner or whatever. And they're talking and sharing stories, and Hercule says, when it's coffee time, he's like, guys, you want to know about my methods, how I solve crimes? Well, I'm going to tell them to you. And everyone's kind of excited, and Jap's kind of making some jokes, and Hercule goes into his methodology of how this whole situation could have come about. And he breaks it down, how he goes by step. I'm not going to go into all that. But he realizes, okay, that 4 people could have been the killers. 1, Daniel Clancy. He did something, and he could have been the killer. And the servers could have been the killer. And the woman, the daughter, could have been the killer. But then he also realizes that Norman could have been the killer, because Norman had a little box on him. So he goes through and tries to figure out who's the killer. Ends up that he realizes that Norman Gale is the killer. He had a box which he opened, and the wasp flew out. He had in his luggage his dentist coat that looked a lot like a steward's coat. So he gets up, he goes to the bathroom, okay, and there's a door, so you can't see where the bathroom is or where the pantry is. So he goes to the bathroom, he puts on his white coat, looks like a steward. He grabs a cart, okay, grabs an extra spoon. He pushes it down. He just walks by everyone. Everyone thinks it's just a steward walking by with coffee. He puts the spoon down for Madame Giselle and stabs her with the poison. She dies, and then he grabs the cart. I don't know why he didn't grab the poison, but he releases the wasp. He grabs the cart, pulls it all the way back, puts the cart away, goes back into the bathroom, takes off his coat that makes him look like a steward, and then he goes back to his seat. So this is how he killed Madame Giselle. But why did he do that? Well, he finds out from his wife, okay, Madame Giselle's daughter, that she does recognize Madame Giselle, that Countess Horbury has dealings with Madame Giselle, and that Madame Giselle is really rich, and he gets this whole idea and this whole plan in how to marry, okay, Anne Morset, so that way he can be in the will. So when he kills Madame Giselle, that Anne will get the money, but then he'll be in the will too. The problem is that he kind of falls in love with Jane while they're on this trip. So he wants the money, but he wants to also marry Jane, who's very beautiful. So now he has to plan how to kill Anne Morset or Mrs. Richards, so that way he can get the money, but then he still wants to marry Jane. So he has this whole plan, which is really quite brilliant. The original plan was he was going to go to Canada to look for new business endeavors before marrying Jane. Go there as Mr. Richards, because his mom's family's name is Richards, but he changes it to, so he's Norman Richards, but he changes it to Norman Gale, his uncle, who owns the dentist shop. So he takes his uncle's name and becomes Norman Gale. So in England, he's Norman Gale, but he's also Norman Richards. We also learned that when Norman was young, that he lived on a farm. It was a snake farm, okay? Oh my goodness, all these pieces are falling into place. Jap and Hercule Poirot have been working for this last week since Mrs. Richards' death to find out all this information. And then we learn that that Norman sent Mrs. Richards on this boat ride, and on the boat ride, he forced her to drink this poison. There's like a bruise on her neck, so he kind of pushed and made her drink it. And Hercule says, we even have fingerprints on the bottle. Now, this whole time, Norman is like getting angry and he's upset, but he still knows there's no proof. It's all speculation. But then Hercule says, yes, we even found your fingerprints on the bottle. And Norman says, that's a lie. I wore... Oh, gloves? You admit that you wore gloves, right? He caught him in his own lie. Norman gets so angry, he's about ready to jump on the table and like try to kill or hurt Hercule Poirot, but Jap was ready and grabbed him and restrained him and arrested him. Whew. Oh my goodness. I had no idea that Norman was the killer. Hercule talks about he actually pretended to think that Norman was innocent by asking for his help, but then he learned that Norman was actually a really good actor, and maybe he could have acted as the American to buy the blowpipe and all this stuff, and all the pieces just fell into place. So this ends. Daniel Clancy's sitting there and he's like, wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much for allowing me to join, for taking me on this idea. Hercule's cleaning some things. We see a picture. Han Vignette Kerr and Lord Horbury are getting married. Exciting. And he plans for Jane to marry Monsieur Jean Dupont the younger. And at the end, he ends up meeting Jane, and Jane is pretty angry, but she's thankful that she didn't marry Norman Gale because he probably would have died. And then Hercules sends her off on this trip to Persia. So while she's in Persia, helping out the DuPonts, maybe she'll fall in love and get married. And at the end, Jane gives him a kiss on his forehead and says, "You have been." She says, "You're not very kind," and she says, "Are you kind?" And he gets angry, saying, "I am not kind." And then she says, "Well, maybe you're not kind, but you've been kind to me." She kisses him, and that's how the story ends. Wow, man! Chapter 26 was so awesome. Actually, these last 3 chapters are pretty incredible. Acquiesce means yield or let go of your way. Contorted is twisted, as Hercules kind of thinking and puzzling, and everything's not fitting in his mind. His face is contorting, it's twisting on his face. Vehemence and is power, but I think of it as also having some anger, angry power. Kind of no. I actually can't remember what he's doing, but he pounds his hand someone pounds their hand very strongly. Idiosyncrasies is like special small features. They could be like your small habits in your face, or it could be that this poison, even though it usually kills people really quickly, maybe because your body or what you ate for lunch or medication you took, maybe it acted differently. Okay, the small things, small details that are different. Supposition, these are some logic words, so philosophy words. Supposition is an idea, a theory, a statement. And premise is a foundation block to build towards a logical idea. So here's an idea, A plus B equals C. Okay, so the A and B are premises. They're kind of building off of each other to get the conclusion. But Hercules' premises and suppositions, they're not matching based on the situation, which is why he then goes and does all this research for a week to learn all about Norman Gale. Mountebank maybe is a trickster, charlatan, a thief, a crook. Precipitate is to trigger, to start, especially in a bad case. Maybe precipitate an avalanche, a small trigger that starts a really bad chain of events. Coincide means happen together. These 2 events needed to happen together to make Hercule Poirot's ideas match. And then the last one here is fructified. Fructified. I don't know. It means to bear fruit, to make fruitful. I have the word ripen here, to make acceptable in a way. So Norman Gale's plans, they all had fruit. They all started fructified. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce that word. Fructified, but that happened. I've never seen the word before, so I had to actually look it up myself. But I had guessed it meant ripened or to make fruit, but to start or to gain from your plan. That leaves us with our discussion question. Have you ever been caught in a lie? A little bit like Norman, where he said, you couldn't have had my fingerprints because I wore gloves when I killed her. Shoot. You caught me. Something like that. Maybe with your parents or with a friend. And of course, please make your own discussion question. Thank you so much for joining me for this journey of Death in the Clouds by Agatha Christie. I look forward to talking with you soon. Bye-bye.